From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Day 6 of the Alabama Legislature's 2024 regular session is in the books. The House and Senate met today to close out 2 very busy and fast-paced legislative weeks. That means we are now 1/5 of the way through this 30-day legislative session. The big story of the day came from the House, where lawmakers passed the comprehensive gambling plan we've been reporting on since the session began. House Bills 151 and 152 from State Representative Chris Blackshear would institute a state lottery, expand and regulate casino gambling, and legalize sports betting in Alabama. Of course, they would first need to pass the Senate and be approved by state voters. House members debated the bills for more than 5 hours. More than 2/3 of the chamber supported the legislation, meaning the opposition was far outnumbered. They were vocal, however, many of them coming from the Birmingham area.
Seems like I've been here before, guys. This has come up dozens of times over the last 20 years. This one, to grab a phrase from Coach Saban, is full of rat poison. Full of rat poison. And Coach Saban always said, don't come in and tell these guys how good they are because you're feeding them rat poison. And we know, we've already established that gambling causes social problems in the state of Alabama. Gambling takes money from the commerce in the state of Alabama. It puts it into the hands of a group of people that will probably take the profits to another state at some time in the future. We're opening the door for things that we could not imagine 10, 15 years down the road.
It is certainly a relief for me as I've traveled the state over the last 12 months trying to find these bad actors that are hiding in every community across the state. And today we made a step forward in shutting those folks down and again running those folks out of the state of Alabama. So I commend my comrade here, my friend that's worked this process with us for so long over the last 12, 14 months. It's been a lot of late nights for us, but we certainly are appreciative. We're certainly appreciative of the members that came and asked questions for us and tried to find out exactly what was in the bill. As you can imagine, any type of bill with this caliber, there's a lot of false information floating around. There's a lot of opposition coming from out of state money. And anyway, with that being said, I think we absolutely took the right step forward today in the state of Alabama.
After the vote, Governor Kay Ivey released a statement reaffirming her support of the gambling plan. It said in part, quote, "Today's passage of HB 51 and HB 152 in the House is an important step forward and very significant, as this has not been accomplished by the House in years. This is a tough, complex issue, and I commend Representative Chris Blackshear, Representative Andy Witt, and House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter for their leadership." End quote. Let's review one more time what this legislation does. If approved, it would scrap all of Alabama's existing gambling laws and constitutional amendments, including local bingo amendments. Then the plan would institute a state lottery, expand and regulate casino gambling, and legalize sports betting. It would set up a commission with staff structure to regulate the industry with commissioners appointed by the governor and legislative leaders. 10 casinos would be allowed under the plan, including the current 3 Porch Bandit Creek Indian sites. Operators could bid for licenses in Macon, Greene, Mobile, Jefferson, Houston, and Lowndes counties, where of course there are existing gambling operations. There would also be an additional license awarded pending approval of a compact with the Porch Creeks. Casinos would be taxed at 24%, while sports betting would be taxed at 17%. Proponents estimate that revenue to the state would be between $800 million and $1 billion annually. Where would that money go? Lottery proceeds would all go toward a special fund set aside for education. Casino and sports betting revenue would be placed in a trust fund to shore up general fund accounts, and then used for expenditures like health care, mental health, state parks, state retiree benefits, and other non-recurring expenses. The Senate took up an agenda of mostly non-controversial bills, but one, aimed at raising the compensation for local boards of registrars, sparked some debate. Sponsored by Senate Minority Leader Bobby Singleton, Senate Bill 81 seeks to increase the daily pay for registrars from $80 to $100. During discussions, some senators reported receiving phone calls and emails urging them to oppose the bill due to concerns over language about racial quotas. That led to some clarifying conversations on the floor.
One registrar called me and says, support, support, support. We've got a small pay raise in this that is important to us. Then I had another one that called me and said, vote no, vote no, vote no, because of an element where they think they're being required to do something in this legislation in regards to who can be appointed as a registrar.
Wherever possible, that they can, to make sure that the membership of the board reflect the diversity of the state. It's not that they have to do it, it's only to ensure where it is possible that they can do that. I know that there are some counties that they're not gonna be able to do that, and they don't have to do it, but they will at least coordinate together and try to make it happen. It's like being in a black belt county. And because when I look at it, Mr. President, is that the Board of Registrars should be neutral. It should not be about Republicans, it should not be about Democrats, because we're talking about an electoral process to where everybody, versus black, white, citizen, everybody comes to that Board of Registrars to register to vote, and they should be comfortable to go to that Board of Registrars.
That bill passed 15-10 with one abstention and 10 senators not voting. Coming up after the break, I'll sit down with State Representative Chris Blackshear, the sponsor of that gambling plan that passed today, for some questions about details of the bills. And then Adam Thompson of Americans for Prosperity is in studio to talk about the school choice bill that we are likely to see moving next week. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Today was a monumental one in the House of Representatives. They passed a gambling plan legalizing casino-style gambling, a statewide lottery, and also sports betting in Alabama. Joining me next to talk about it is the sponsor of that plan, State Representative Chris Blackshear of Phoenix City. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Todd, good to be back with you again.
You've had a long day on the House floor, but actually not as long as I thought it was going to be. I mean, there was a lot of debate, especially on the constitutional amendment, but it wasn't this go to midnight kind of thing that you typically see for controversial legislation. Talk about because y'all had the votes. Talk about the difference maker in what put this over the top in terms, because look, this has always died in the House. What was the difference maker in changing that narrative?
I think first off, it starts with leadership, and that's at the top with Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter when he appointed Representative Andy Witt to lead our little kind of task force over a year ago to really go off and challenge us to look at the problems that were around the state and come up with a solution. You're right, the Senate had passed, I think 3 times over the past several years, different forms of a comprehensive gaming plan, and we never took anything up in the House. And we said, look, this is a growing problem in our state that can no longer go unaddressed. So we dug in, but not only is it leadership, it also shows the value of true communication and bipartisan workmanship. We worked across the aisle. We asked the Minority Caucus to put together a working committee as well too, so we can work arm in arm throughout this process. And it proves that trust, loyalty, and more importantly, communication goes a long way. And I think that was seen in the public eye really for the first time today, Todd, where so many questions had already been answered behind the scenes. I mean, multiple sit-downs with multiple elected officials and colleagues in the House to answer their questions, and I think you saw that displayed on the House floor today.
An issue like gambling sometimes brings very big passions, right? And so you had some colleagues that were speaking out against it, on the House floor, and sometimes that can be tense. But talk about at the end of the day, does the caucus still, kind of agree to disagree, even though there are some opposed to any kind of expansion of gambling, and had their voices heard and voted no?
Husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, is it perfect in their relationships? I mean, they have disagreements all the time. It wouldn't, in my opinion, it wouldn't work the best as it possibly could if you agreed on everything. I think a lot of times in life we learn from our failures. We learn from things that may not go our way, more so to how to be better approachable next time. And I think as a whole, our caucus is still together. We're still going to continue forward to make this state great and greater than what it already is. And this is only going to make our team stronger moving forward.
Okay. There was an exchange between you and Representative Treadaway in committee yesterday talking about the enforcement division. He had some questions about, because it's going to be a separate from existing law enforcement, right, if this becomes law. So talk about what y'all were discussing, and is that coming to a resolution, the problems he had with it?
Well, first off, I really appreciate Representative Treadaway's willingness. He sat down with us, and we asked him to, it's hard to find somebody with more experience than 30 years in law enforcement, specifically in Birmingham, one of the largest hotbeds for these illegal gaming operations that we're talking about shutting down and starting to regulate. So we brought him in and said, look, pass the penalties, write them up for us. How would you increase our penalties? So we increased all 6 penalties that were on the books for illegal gaming. We added 8 new felonies in the legislation that was passed today, and that was all Representative Treadaway's authorship and penmanship that caused that. And he's passionate about his beliefs, and I love having conversations with people that they make me better, and they make me see a different view. And he's a firm believer, being there 30 years, he's seen some people it feels like they weren't done right through the merit system process. And what it boils down to is that we have the law enforcement division under the Gaming Commission set up to be, at-will employers outside the merit system. Our thought behind that was we can bring in some retired police officers in the state. They can keep their retirement, they can keep their benefits, and be boots on the ground faster with a lot more experience. And Representative Treadaway thinks they just need to be brought in underneath the merit system so they can have that protection. So at the end of the day, that's the only difference with that.
Mm-hmm. There have been concerns from just from a general standpoint about it being separate, like under the commission rather than traditional law enforcement, basically ALEA. So talk about that. Why the decision to have an entire separate law enforcement rather than a trusted brand like ALEA?
Well, in my opinion, ALEA is already struggling. Could keep troopers on the roads as it is. Why throw more weight on some shoulders of an organization that's still trying to find ways to remove some of those weights and roadblocks they have in front of them? So this gives us the flexibility to stand this up. They can truly focus on a specific area of the state and doesn't take away from anything else our current law enforcement's are working on and enforcing those laws. And plus, too, this doesn't take any money directly out of the existing budgets. It will all be funded from the net gaming revenues that come into the state, so to kind of be your standalone, self-funded enforcement wing.
Okay, I see. Now, I've had this question since the beginning because we keep saying 10 casinos, but then there's also this additional license that's available after a compact. So what's the number? Is it 10 or is it 11?
So let's start at ground level. First
Okay.
off, there's 3 existing casinos today.
Porch Creek.
That are in Atmore, Tallapoosa, and Wetumpka. And those are on federally protected land. So there's 3.
Right.
So when it comes to a math of license we can issue, you can't count those 3. But we were just trying to be completely open to the public that we're going to issue 7, no more than 7 license. And keep in mind, Todd, it's very important to note, we put that in the CA. So that passes and ratified by the citizens. It would take another vote of the people of the state to increase more than 7 license.
Okay.
And one of those 7 was part of that we go to the PCI for a compact.
Okay, so 10 is the number.
10 is
not
the
11.
number. No,
Okay.
10 is the number counting to 3. And again, that is the absolute max
Okay.
it can be.
Interesting. There's also this question of healthcare, and like it was kind of non-specific because I remember back in 2021, that was kind of the breakdown, right? How specific are you going to be about Medicaid versus just more general language on healthcare? But look, the Democrats, this is a big priority for them and an increasing number of Republicans. Maybe it's not Medicaid expansion, maybe it's a public-private partnership kind of thing, but do you expect this revenue to help fund some kind of healthcare, making more healthcare affordable and available to more Alabamians?
Well, I personally think that, you got to take the Republicans and Democrats out of it for a moment and realize that there's a lot of rural areas in this state, and there's pockets, and I personally believe in all 67 counties in this state, that have a lack of some type of health services, whether it's telemedicine, ambulatory care. They may be driving 50 plus miles to get treatment, to see a doctor, a specialist. That was all meant to be. You never know what our needs may be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. We need to find ways to always make sure we have the most adequate, up-to-date, and ready, available, and easiest access to any type of health care service for all of our citizens.
So you think some of this revenue goes to pay for that?
If I can give you an example. Well, you give an example on this. I think the ask this year in the budget for Medicaid is $91 million additional dollars.
An increase, yeah.
An increase. So what happens? I'm just fast forward on this. That we all of a sudden don't have a supplemental. The only money you would have would be the gaming revenue. You would have a choice to say, okay, I'll pull $91 million out of this gaming supplemental to fund the additional ask of Medicaid to take care of the people on the books, before you cut $91 million in other services.
But it's not earmarked already.
No, it's just things that must be considered each and every year. And everything is, and you got to think now, it's non-reoccurring. So you can't use these funds with something that you would fund and all of a sudden turns into reoccurring.
I see. Okay, well that's interesting. We'll follow that going forward. That's an issue we are really honed in on. Well, we only have a little bit of time, but this obviously goes to the Senate now. Whole different body, different rules, lots of filibusters, things like that. Have you had time to do a whip count? What is this bill? What's this plan's chances in the Senate?
Well, I think first off, I said at the top of the segment with you is I think it's been 3 different times we failed to take something up in the House, and we did it this time. So Senator Albritton called me right after we passed the vote, and he said, we're looking forward to working with you on this. I said, well, we showed it to play ball this time, Senator. I said, so I'm going to toss it over to you and let you run with it now. And that's the best part about the democracy and the process and the system we have set up. It's 2 different bodies for a reason. They'll have their opportunities to have their debate, their discussion on the floor, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, we will be following. Well, look, I know it's been a long day. You're going to want to hit the road, but thanks for coming on and answering some of these questions about a very big, important policy decision.
Todd, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. School choice, and specifically education savings account legislation, is a big issue in this 2024 regular session. One organization involved in that debate is Americans for Prosperity. And joining me now to talk about it is Adam Thompson, State Director for AFP. Adam, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tom, for having us.
Well, look, you're the State Director for AFP. I know that's a relatively new role for you, but you've had other roles in Alabama government and politics. Talk about your background, but also tell us more about AFP and why it's now engaged in Alabama.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've spent about 15 years in state government in a variety of positions, worked for 3 secretaries of state, a state auditor, Governor Ivey, and was deputy commissioner of a state cabinet agency. So I've got a fair amount of experience here in Alabama. So AFP, Americans for Prosperity, we believe people are capable of extraordinary things when barriers are removed. And so we work across the nation to remove those barriers that are keeping people from living their version of the American dream. So whether it's economic issues or health care or free speech or other types of issues, including and most importantly sometimes education, we work to get that grassroots mobilization, those everyday Alabamians involved in the legislative process and the political process so that they can make their voices heard.
So y'all are supportive of this school choice education savings account plan, right? So let's get into that. It's up in the Senate. It's in committee. There was a public hearing, but no vote yet, right? And so we expect that to really be a big topic next week. Make the pitch. What is the argument for this education savings account plan?
Yeah, so it's really quite simple. No children learn the same, right? Those of us who have children understand that, and grandchildren, or if you're an aunt or an uncle, you understand all children are unique. And so a one-size-fits-all model that we've had as the education system in America for the last 100 years just does not help every individual child. And so there has to be change, there has to be customization, there has to be mechanisms in place so that each child can succeed, can get the services they need, the education they need to live the best version of their life, their American dream, and be successful in the future.
Now, I know, I mean, not every state is the same when it comes to school choice, right?
Right.
Because Governor Ivey keeps saying that she wants Alabama to be one of the top, most
Absolutely.
school choice friendly schools. So based on your experience looking at other states, maybe your colleagues in other states, how does this bill compare? Are y'all happy with where, because it is kind of an incremental, more measured approach than the proposal last year.
Right, no, we're very happy. I mean, Governor Ivey and Senator Orr and Representative Garrett took a long time to really craft a quality piece of legislation. This ranks very highly in the neighboring states. There are about 7 states who have education savings accounts implemented. And so I think this will put Alabama right in the middle of that pact, if not at the top of that pack, because it is going to really transform children's lives in this state.
Well, there are opponents to this, and plenty of them. And you heard some of those arguments in committee the other day saying, look, school choice is great in theory and everything, but at the end of the day, you're talking about taking maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, away from what could go to traditional public schools and diverting it to private schools and also homeschools. So, I mean, look, that has concerned lawmakers for years. So how can you respond to that argument?
Sure. Well, I think Governor Ivey's plan is sound to make sure that we're not touching the foundation formula for education, right? The money and the multipliers that fund all of our school systems. This money is coming from the various tax receipts that are collected through the state before it even gets to the ETF. So we're not decreasing anybody's appropriation or any other school system's funding in the traditional sense. This is above and beyond what we're already doing to provide those additional opportunities for students who want a different version of an education and have specific needs that are just not being met.
All right. Well, I know you didn't write the bill or anything, but I'm curious about how it works.
Yeah.
It's a tax credit, but it would ultimately go. If you make the choice to send your child to, let's say, a private school, parochial school, how does it actually work? How, in practice, not just in theory.
Sure. The way we understand it, it works. You'll apply with the Department of Revenue. If approved, you'll get an education savings account established in that child's name. It's funded with the $7,000 per child for the parent and family, then to direct to various education service providers. So maybe private school, maybe tutoring, maybe extracurriculars, whatever those needs are, from an approved vendor list from the Department of Revenue. So there are accountability measures in there to make sure that the money is being spent on those education expenses and not just on whatever they might want, but it is set up on behalf of the count. So there's a layer of accountability there.
Yeah, that was the buzzword we heard kind of coming into the session. Would there be restrictions? Would there be, standards on accreditation and things like that? I know a lot of people are happy to see that in this bill. Let me ask about school choice in general, though, because going back to the real genesis of school choice 20 years ago more, the argument was, okay, we want all education to be better,
Right.
and so let's actually kind of create competition, and in that way motivate and encourage the traditional public schools to improve. Right? Competition breeds improvement. Do you think a proposal like this could actually lead to some of that, or is it more of a competition for funds?
I absolutely think better competition can lead to improvements for all education. So there are several national nonprofits who've done studies on this that show even marginal increases in public school test scores and other test scores. So I think there are avenues where this is going to help increase, but really it's about the customization. It's about focusing on the individual child and making sure they're getting that quality education that meets their specific needs. Top-down solutions just are very ineffective usually, and so when you have a bottom-up solution that focuses on the child and their needs, you're going to find it is much more successful. And so for a lot of families across this country, these types of policies and other school choice policies have been lifesavers for them. It's enabled their child to really succeed in ways that they didn't even think were possible.
Well, going into next week, this is going to be a big topic. We're out of time, But thank you again for coming on, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much, Todd.
We'll be right back.
From its establishment in 1969 by the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, also known as the Swampers, until the mid-1980s, the Muscle Shoals Sound Studios in Sheffield, Colbert County was one of the most sought-after recording studios in the nation. Muscle Shoals played a prominent role in American popular music, both as a production facility and as a stylistic embodiment of Southern regional music. The studio also held a unique place in the narrative of soul music in the early 1970s. From the Rolling Stones to Aretha Franklin, performers who recorded at the studio represent some of the most notable and popular recording artists of the time. The remarkable consistency of the music created by the Swampers is a testament to the synergy of the players and their dedication to the art of recording. The studio's legacy, which is internationally recognized, testifies to music's ability to bring people together. Muscle Shoals Sound Studio was placed on the National Register of Historic Places on June 2, 2006.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 for Capital Journal's Week in Review. You won't want to miss it. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.